The studious approach to work was now relieved by bars, here being distributed by the senior master Tony Pym. Bars in those days were chunks of plain bread designed to keep the wolf from the door until the next meal, and they were served out of doors in all but the very worst of weather. Jazz had made it to Bootham under the guidance of Percy Lovell. Music had been considered something of a novelty when it was first introduced 100 years before, but by the 40s everything was certainly in full swing. Boys had always been encouraged to garden, and during the war years the school made extra efforts. The garden at 54 Bootham was a favourite one for boys. They were encouraged to help with grounds maintenance. The lawnmower was a definite improvement over the 19th century flock of sheep which had once been employed to graze the grounds. From natural history stemmed an interest in archaeology, and the neighbouring grounds of St Mary's Abbey offered a happy hunting ground for the enthusiastic pupils. Although their somewhat primitive methods might cause today's conservationists to raise an eyebrow or two. Niamh Brayshaw and Philip Corder had created this interest in archaeology, culminating in the excavation of the Roman site at Crambeck in 1926. Archaeology was only one of the many leisure hour activities which have always been an important feature of Bootham life. In the words of Arthur Rowntree, the test of a man's education is in what he does when he is not compelled to do anything. In those days, lessons were given in form rooms where boys had their own desks, and staff would move from room to room in accordance with a timetable. After lessons had finished, pupils were keen to move on to leisure activities, where a great deal of choice was available. Boys on their way into town used what, at that time, was the main access for the school, which ran between 49 and 51 Bootham. York itself offered boundless opportunities, with many right on the doorstep. The greatest, of course, being the Minster itself, barely 300 metres from the school. A short cycle ride away, there was more to visit and explore. A 1930s description of the breadth of interest covered lists hobbies including breeding canaries, Hungarian music, Quaker pedigrees, and finally the acquisition of general information on any subject except horse racing. Natural history expeditions were a regular feature of Bootham life. One Henry Bateman was judged to have kept a good diary of observations on birds and their nests, whilst Frederick Nattrass was advised to add to his record sketches of the birds and fuller notes on their habits and habitat. Excursions were made throughout the summer to various places such as Askham Bog, Clifton Ings and Weldrake. John Dell was the first biologist to be appointed, and he developed a keen interest in ornithology. Searching for specimens, nests, eggs and chicks became an all-consuming passion. An account written at the time and recorded in the 1936 edition of Bootham magazine describes the work of the ornithology group. Our bird ringing has flourished, and we have ringed this year nearly 2,000 birds, comprising 54 species, of which 25% were trapped. We are now one of the leading trapping stations in the country and have birds recovered in Britain at places from Fife to Penzance and in several places abroad. And if scientific results are lacking, well, no one would let an opportunity for general mudlarking and high spirits to pass them by. Any excuse to get completely soaked to the skin was grabbed with enthusiasm. And in any case, all could be assured of a warming tea back at base. Specimens of all types were faithfully catalogued and stored in the Natural History Room. All were carefully examined with the very latest technical equipment available at that time. The specimens themselves and the records of expeditions formed the basis of illustrations and diaries which now provide a treasure trove of information in the archives. Although not all the specimens seem to have been totally submissive. Handywork, as it was termed, produced an amazing array of artifacts. Whilst the somewhat casual approach to molten metal, without regard to modern-day protective clothing, can cause us to shiver, nonetheless, the pupils survived and learnt. Woodwork gained a special mention for one Samuel Bell, whose exact model of his family's sailing boat received a particular mention. Describing his work, the master records, "Bell's sailing boat is constructed from individually shaped planks, bent over ribs. It is robust, shapely and light. This boat is extremely well finished and probably one of the best produced at Bootham for some years." Sometimes enthusiasm got the better of accuracy, but where accidents did occur, they were perhaps treated more light-heartedly than they would be nowadays. Every year, pupils were rewarded by an exhibition where the best of their work was on display to staff, parents and friends of the school. Prizes were awarded, and the whole event formed a very special part of the calendar. It took 3 weeks to move Bootham to Ampleforth at the outbreak of war in 1939. At that time, boys dismantled beds, the workshop made blackout screens, and the term finally started at the end of September, complete with Donald Gray's cat, Timmy.